Yeah, I mean, my approach, I think, is to go through community-based.
Well, that's what he recommended too.
Absolutely. I mean, that's my fight. To strengthen them,
right,
and they will know what to do. If it's a top-down thing, it won't. Try.
That's an element I wanted to add to, because his panel is talking sexual violence, for instance, excuse me, from most rural areas have driven most people who have been working in agriculture to run away from, their places, villages, and go into the cities. So how do we address that issue also? It should be made part of the government's responsibility. Like, I think it also drives the fact that agriculture's or the sector is really, declining.
Yes, yes, and that's. I mean, we are working on a paper on the role of conflict and mining, and how can agriculture address that? Because agriculture is the only sector that can provide a stable income, and once one has a stable income, the opportunity cost of joining conflicts, it's very high because of that stable income. But when that stable income is no longer there, what left is, let's be adventurous and join the fight.
One question I would like you to address maybe is the issue of genetically modified seeds.
Yeah.
Africa, being what it is, we don't have the knowledge. How would you view the future of, let's say, producing more crops, fighting against hunger by introducing the genetically modified seeds, for instance, in Africa, when culturally speaking and, university-wise?
I mean, I know this is a very hot debate. My only sense is that we haven't yet, as Africa, reached the point where we need to genetically modify seed. I think we still have some potential to increase production without GMOs. That's my take.
And I guess I don't know if it's true that Africa doesn't have the knowledge. I think, there's something to be said for more kind of regional and Pan-African communications. If you look at Kenya, I think that there's a lot of interesting agricultural research going on with indigenous seeds.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And so I just wanted to say that.
Absolutely.
Yes, I think that's absolutely
Zimbabwe
right.
as well, even though now it's not what it used to be.
And the Nerika variety, the rice variety that is being now promoted as the highest, was developed jointly by African-based researchers using local knowledge and Japanese. So it's and it's working well.
Because when you put your map capacity building, and you said you received this email, cutting down one of the key sectors, which is education. You really want to invest in people, not giving them food. So how do you envision the kind of aid that will continue maybe to drop a few things, for these people to eat today? Why all the knowledge? Because if you get to Congo, that's why we need you, of course. With all these big maps, numbers and everything else, the minister who doesn't know much will just be completely,
lost.
Lost, of course.
Something.
Instead of investing into the people who should be able to understand particularly their own problems and try to come up with solutions from within the country, who will continue to be dependent from outside.
Yeah. So it's sad, but I mean, I would like to do that. This is the vision I have, and I don't have the money to.
So put your money where it is.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh.
No, go ahead. Is there another question in the back? Yes, ma'am.
Oh, okay. Yeah, thank you for a wonderful talk. And my question comes out of a real lack of knowledge about this area at all. But I wonder if you could talk a little about the distribution of land ownership, especially with regard to the agribusiness that may or may not play a role in this. And the other question, the other part of that question is, who are your main competitors in the sense of is there a countervailing kind of weight, especially in the government, that says no, we need to develop industry as opposed to agriculture or something like that?
The first, I lost that first question.
About the distribution of
Distribution
the land.
of land.
Yes, we are doing a research on land governance in Africa in general, but also in DRC, and the land. There's no land market per se in DRC. The law says that land belongs to the government. But then, the government decides to allocate the land based on a few things. And the latest law that was signed last year is making people a little bit nervous, especially the private investors. Because it says that you, especially the foreigners, cannot invest more than 50% of the overall value of the investment. And even today, again, I got a message because somehow they think that, yeah, I may know something. What exactly? So what we are trying to work on is to bring a lawyer who is knowledgeable to explain the content of that law on the land, because it's not clear cut. So that's the problem with DRC, because you have two different systems. You have the so-called formal system of land allocation, and you have the traditional system. And sometimes you get caught into between, and you don't know exactly who is supposed to make the final decision. So that is a big issue, and because of that, that's again one of the reasons they see huge farms, because you need ownership of the land for you to invest. I mean, these are talking about 20, 30 years investment. So if you are not comfortable, you are not sure about ownership, that's a big problem. And that's what we are trying to address now, and hopefully we'll get there. And on competitors, yes, I will not name. Yes, there are people who, first you have the group of importers. This is a huge business. I told you, 300 million a year. This is a huge. And they will do anything to prevent local production. So that's the game. And then you have good friends from Europe, who they have to protect their farmers. Because, I mean, if DRC today is able to at least use half of its potential efficiently, we will be the biggest supplier in Africa. And that is frightening to all these farmers. I mean, in Europe, they I didn't want to get there. The farmers are very vocal. So that's and then you still have some international agencies, IMF, World Bank, that will tell you you need to prioritize to invest first in mining. Seems to be easy, invest and maybe the return from mining can be used to.
Yes, the trickle down.
That's,
Trickle up is the idea.
that is not happening, and I don't think it will happen. So I will stick with agriculture. I think it's the other way around. I mean, all developed countries, they started with agriculture, and then the development in agriculture spilled over into other sectors of the economy. That's what we see. But you know, and again, that it requires strong leadership, country-driven leadership, to stand against some of these competitors, so to speak.
Yeah. If I may just add to what Dr. Ulimwengu stated here, the traditional allocation of land was based on ethnic groups, and evolving from there, whatever families that had land. So for example, if I was part of a family that had a large portion of land, my children will be able to cultivate in that land. Okay? And nobody can tell them that they cannot, unless you have some cultural systems whereby a woman, for example, cannot claim to have a right. But if she is divorced, she has the right to go back to that land and have her plot and plant whatever she wants, and she can sell it and so on. No questions asked, etc. But knowing that DRC is a huge country, if you cannot imagine Western Europe, imagine almost four times the size of Texas. There's plenty of land that doesn't belong to any quote-unquote, family or ethnic group. And that is the land that, per the law that was passed, when was the Bakajika law passed? During Mobutu's time. It says, any land that is not claimed, in principle, not claimed, belong to the state, and the state will sell it or will, pass it on to anybody who comes and bids on it, etc. Well, that not claimed, that little phrase has been forgotten. So now the Kabila and company, they will give concession to anybody. They will remove people, and they have done so in mining sectors in the eastern part of the country, as well as in the southern part of the country. Therefore, part of the conflict and some of the interest that comes out of the competition that you reference creates the difficulty that someone faces. So it's a whole different ballgame here that we're looking at. Due also the lack of planning. You have to have people who can do the research, who can plan, who can motivate others. Other than that, you live on substantive, agriculture, planning for yourself and your